G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here. Welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. In this episode, we have a good yarn with Karl Belcher. Karl's a trustee of the Yarnsman, has really helped support and shape and enable a lot of the work we do. He shares his story of losing both his twin sisters, one to suicide and then the other to cancer more recently. This journey, his early family life has shaped the kind of man he is and how he wants to help people. In this episode, we talk about how to create trusted, safe opportunities for people to connect in the environments you can do that in. We talk about social health, social prescribing, how to support and look out for mates while also trying to practice what you preach. Hope you enjoy the yarn as much as I did. Hello and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have Karl Belcher in the high-tech podcast studio. How are you, Karl?
Yeah, good, thanks, Matthew. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Karl is a husband, father, long-time Yarnsman supporter. So let's jump into the questions then, mate.
Sounds good.
What have you struggled with in the last week?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as we talked about earlier, it's one of the questions that sometimes it's actually hard to answer that one, eh? But for me, I'd say two things. One is, just being a father, like you said. A lot of sickness in the house. It's winter at the moment, so that juggle of everyone being down and out and kind of supporting the family has been a bit of a struggle, whilst maintaining your job and things too. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but also for me, probably the workload at work's been a bit of a struggle too. As a manager of a pretty big team, lots of stuff that comes up in that space, which has been a challenge, but you work your way through it.
It's probably worth touching on what your role is, because that kind of fits in with the yarn today.
Yeah, of course. So for me, currently I'm the service manager of the primary mental health service at Pegasus. So Pegasus is one of the largest PHOs in the country, providing primary mental health. PHOs are through your general practice teams, but we have the primary mental health service runs via the general practice. So we have a few different streams of service. So one of them is your health improvement practitioners, which you can access through your GP, part of an access and choice funding stream that came out of national funding. There was a review here at Oranga in 2019 around improving access. So, we've got about 50 HIPs and practices. I don't do a lot of the main work. It's the staff that do it on the ground. We've got team leaders supporting them too, so I get to kind of support the team leaders in that space. And then we have our brief intervention service, which is a referral-based service. Some people know it as BIC, brief intervention counselling as well. And then we have suicide prevention and post-vention work as well. So about a team of people on the ground, 80 people across three main service streams. And I feel really fortunate and privileged to be in that space, leading that team. And my background is social work background, so I've worked in primarily mental health, since graduating from social work training. Did a stint at Hill Morton Hospital, inpatient wards in the community outpatient sector, the east side of Christchurch, which is a really eye-opening experience, and you kind of see the real struggle that people face out there at that kind of real severe end of mental health, and kind of felt in that space that I wanted to do something more preventative. So that led me to a role at the time with a service called the Canterbury Men's Centre, which is a local service here that's around counselling for men. So I was fortunate enough again to be in a manager role there to support the team and grow the service with some great people there, to improve access to counselling and resources and things. And then about 6-7 years ago, moved into that Pegasus space and have been there since.
I find your career really interesting, and obviously you've been such an important part of the Yarnsman journey with all that experience in your mindset. So I guess I can say it on a recorded line. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure, Ed. I think that's one of the things for me. This work is it's not just work, and I think that's the essence of the Yarnsman. It's part of a collective. It's part of what it is to be human and being connected to people and creating spaces where you can have open conversations. Because the world we live in, I think, the world that we're in now, has less opportunities for that. So the more we can create those spaces for people, the better. So it's a real privilege to be involved in the work, and always feel really honoured to be asked to support things and initiatives as well.
Cool bananas, love it. Well, let's get back on track to
Yeah.
the we got a bit off pace there,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
so provide some context.
Yeah.
What do you want to work on in the next week?
Oh, it's a good question, hey. Like, over the next week for me, what I want to work on is actually getting back to my routine. Like, I think for me, I probably struggle with this every year. Again, these kind of lulls a bit of, over winter time. And, get out of my routine a bit of going to the gym in the morning, finding some space for myself just to kind of to breathe a bit, get a bit of capacity. So, we talk about this in, therapy with people and the work I've done is like, you do have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. That old cliche saying, but it's really true. And I think we're all guilty of it, and I think men in particular are really good at helping others or doing things for others, but less so at doing it for yourself.
Practice what you preach.
Exactly, yeah. So for me, it's about actually I'm committed to next Monday morning, back in the gym 5:30. So that's something I'm going to work on and get into that routine. Because once it starts, it's easy to get caught up in needing to feel like you have to do heaps of different things, but one small change, that's the kind of domino effect. You can that cascades into other areas. So, and for me, that's usually the first step on the staircase. So,
one of the big challenges I have of over the last few months of trying all these different things and trying to maintain my own well-being while my fucking body's falling apart and my mind's falling apart. How do you keep going and integrate some of those things? So when you and I sit around and talk about this stuff, it's again, practice what we preach.
Yeah.
But sometimes you forget when you get busy, stressed, into a seasonal lull.
Yeah. Well, I think as I've as got older and life's got busier, I think you have to, you can't just I'm going to do it on Monday. You got to actually have a plan around it. You got to be a bit structured around it. So for me, part of it is actually talking to my wife Charlie, who's great supportive partner and wife, and saying, hey, look, I need to get up early in the morning because it's important for my well-being. So acknowledging that with her, having a conversation about it. The other thing for me sounds really simple, but the night before getting my gym clothes out, putting them on down the bottom of the stairs, getting up to get it, setting an alarm, those kind of things as well. And I think it's just about doing it. So I can't remember where I heard the saying, but someone said motivation comes from doing. If you keep waiting for motivation to come, it's never nothing's going to happen. So you actually just have to commit through and get through, push through that barrier. Because when you wake up at 5 a.m, your mind's going to be like, oh shit, I'm going to go back to sleep. I'm tired and
it's cold.
So, but then once you get into the gym or you get into whatever that's helpful for you, you actually realise after the fact you get that bit of that dopamine hit or whatever it is that gives that boost. Like, I feel really good, and it usually lasts the day. And it's like, and then the more and more you do it, the easier it gets. So I think the research talks about routine and things about 2 to 3 weeks to establish your routine again. So it's pushing through that initial pain barrier to get some result when it gets a bit easier. So again, I think it's just about being more structured. Having a plan is really important as well, and maybe if you're struggling to do it yourself, talk to someone about it that can be your cheerleader, like in that kind of sense, or someone that's a supporter that can help as well. So
or a gym buddy or a running buddy or whatever buddy.
Yeah.
What are you grateful for?
I think everyone talks about your family, hey, like in terms of it's really important to me. Obviously, that's my anchor. My family's my anchor. My kids and my wife at home. But I think for me at the moment, it's to be grateful for my health. As well. It's I'm fortunate that I'm in a place where I've relatively touch wood. And good physical health and mentally as well in a good space. So the more people you meet, the struggles that people face, you see that, and I think that it makes you appreciate what you've got. I've got two. Our daughter's nearly 8 and our son's nearly 4, and I think they're beautiful ages to see your kids and to be able to be engaging with them, to be present, play with them, go to the park, run around with them, play fight, all that kind of stuff. Be active with them is really important to me, and you see it on them as well, that they love that as well. So yeah, I think really grateful for my overall health at the moment, and yeah.
Well, what a fantastic rig you do have.
I could use a bit of work, but that's all right,
Starts on Monday.
Yeah, that's it.
What gives you meaning?
Meaning? For me, I've done a bit of work around what that looks like, and it's around, for me, it's connecting to what's important for you, and for me, that's really around seeing myself and others grow and develop. So any way I can do that, whether it's as a father, as a friend, or in my workplace, that's what gives me meaning. So looking for opportunities to do that is what kind of drives me in my life.
I like that. Yeah. It's very clear and concise. Yep. Love it. Let's take a bit of a step back before we get into talking about social prescribing and social health and all the things that we're going to talk about. What's been your journey to getting into this work? Okay, you've got the kind of work journey, but what's been the personal journey?
Yeah, and it's I think people that get into this work generally have an experience themselves, or they've had family members or friends that have worked through something as well. Obviously, there's other people that have got a more of a curious interest in it, but the majority of the people I've met over time have had some level of experience themselves or through their family. And for me, it's both. It's my own journey, but it's also my family's journey as well that led me to the work. And I look at it as these things happen in your life, but it's also through those adversities as opportunities as well. So I was pretty young. I was probably around. So I'm youngest of 5 in my family, and grew up, in a relatively lower to middle class, humble upbringing. My parents, did the best they can for us. My dad, tradie, and mum just at home mum as well. And youngest of 5, I was kind of chasing around the siblings and trying to be like them and be included and all that, being the annoying little brother and stuff like that. But I was the baby, so they did, they gave me I was fortunate to have those older people around me. I had obviously your parents, but you had those 4 older siblings to help be your pseudo parents in a sense as well. So I learned a lot from them, and probably, in the sense, I think for me, matured a lot because I was around older people my whole life as well. But through that experience, so my older sisters, they're twins, and this is it's a bit of for me, a bit of an emotional topic because they're both no longer with us, but that's part of my journey as well. So my sister Christina, she struggled with bipolar at a pretty young age as well. So I think she was about 17, 18 at the time when she really had a really first manic episode. And being in a household around that, I was probably 8 or 9 at the time. So that was really kind of a eye-opening experience, and kind of to see that, and not really knowing much about what that meant, but just being worried for her. And eventually she got admitted to Hill Morton. I still remember I was talking about my experience with someone else recently around this, and it's one of the clearest memories I have, and it's walking through the old Hill Morton hospital. It felt like a prison. It was a cold environment. I still remember feeling really scared, and I felt really scared for my sister, like to kind of go and see her in that space.
Wow.
And it really shaped me, and I think that always stuck with me. And kind of fast forward to, I guess, the work I'm doing now around wanting to help people not end up in places like that. So Hillmorton's not like that anymore. Hospitals have got a lot more conducive, I think, to wellness, and they're much more aware of the environment. But back then, they were using seclusion a lot more and things like that. And the way she was at the time, she needed that kind of, I think, because she was a risk to herself and others as well. There's that, they need to make decisions around that, but still, probably being exposed to that at a young age was pretty eye-opening. And, through her life, she had those experiences, but it's, I'll switch up a little bit there because my other sister, they're twins, when I was 14, she died by suicide, so that was a big impact on our family. But when I look back, it wasn't just a random thing, like you try to, I think whenever you lose someone, it's particularly suicide, a lot of questions you ask yourself, and it's around what could I have done differently, or what could we as a family have done. But those are a lot of the questions you're never going to get the answer to because that person's gone, and you have to come to a place, I think, of accepting that person made a decision. And when I look back though, it was a really difficult time in her life, so she was relatively young, married. Her husband got diagnosed with cancer, and he, lovely guy, and went through a lot of turmoil in that space, a lot of surgeries, got into remission, but then ended up returning, and he didn't make it through, so he passed. And then they had a son together at the same time, who was in treatment and stuff. So, and his cancer was got a rare genetic component. So her son, my nephew, he had the same gene as his father. So it meant that he would have to have preventative surgery, later on to prevent him from developing the same cancer that his dad did and things like that. So I think all the pain of that and the emotional pain of that and what she went through at the time got too much for her to handle. And I think, she made a choice, and obviously we want to, again, it comes forward to the here and now. It's around, hopefully people can find opportunities and places to make a different choice as well. And yeah, so that's one of my journeys to, I guess, where I am today. And so she left behind my nephew at a pretty young age as well. So he was had no biological parents, but I, older brother to him more than an uncle, and a more even father figure with my dad. We kind of in that environment in the house kind of raised him a bit more in that space. So that kind of took on more responsibility at a young age, I think, as well. And then also my other, so my sister that was still alive, Christine, she really struggled with losing her twin as well, and obviously her journey through bipolar and things like that. Kind of years kind of cycled around, so like every 5 to 7 years there might be an episode of mania and things like that, and she had a lot of hardship in her life too, a lot of traumas and things like that. So she lived a pretty tough life, but she always looked for the best in people. She always accepted people, and no matter their circumstance. And then like I talked about at the start, so she didn't die of mental health related issues. She got diagnosed with breast cancer, and that metastasized to bone cancer later on, and she passed at Christmas time just been. So that was really, again, a big loss for our family. And you really miss her. She's a really fun person to bear, and a lot of high energy, and just a really good person. She struggled a lot, but she accepted people for who they are. When I was fortunate and privileged to give her eulogy, I kind of talked about leaning into what she stood for around acceptance of people, and that's what I want to carry forward as well. And so she's left behind a daughter as well who lives with my parents, and they did their best to support her. So we've got those other, my nephew and niece who are like little siblings to me in a sense as well. My nephew, he's come out the other side of that, so that's the silver lining in that is that he's grown to be, he's 20, he's 22 or 23, I should get that right. But beautiful young man, very insightful, and for someone that's been through so much hardship, that inspires me. Your question start around, or sometimes we have those questions around what gives you hope or what inspires you. That stuff inspires me. Seeing people go through such hardship to turn it around and come out the other side of it as well, and to better themselves is just it's amazing, and I think that if we can be part of that journey for people to help them along that way, then what a good thing to be doing, and as I look back, I think, you have your experiences, but also I think back then, I think mental health as well wasn't so much talked about
Taboo,
as well, and in
right.
the family a bit more taboo, and I think that we didn't talk about that stuff much back then as a family, and I think that's one of the things that probably stuck with me as well. It was around how do you create spaces for people to talk about things if they can't do it in their family. So I think when we see people say if they're coming in for talking therapy or counselling, or even just a conversation, it's actually like creating a trusted and safe space for people to talk about their things and share that human experience with you, and it's about that connection, and the research around talking therapy, it's not so much the therapy, it's the way you make people feel, and the space you create, that relationship, it's that trust. So you don't have to be a counsellor or a therapist to deliver the work, you can just be a mate or a friend, or a parent,
An ear.
an ear. That's it, and that can be life-changing for people. So I think, again, it's coming back to the values of being compassionate, being kind to people, being curious and respectful. We all struggle with different things at different points in our lives, and you never know the struggle people are going through, The more and more you talk to people, it's like, wow, I never knew they were living with that or struggling with or coping with that, and you never know, but they seem to hold it in a space where people are pretty resilient, and I guess, again, in terms of particularly from a male perspective, I think what I've kind of observed over my time working is that different generations probably have different thresholds for seeking help. But I think and I think there's some generations still that particularly struggle about asking for help or talking about things as well. So it's trying to still find ways to break those stigmas down around talking about things and
Mm-hmm.
talking about your emotions. And for a lot of men in particular, I think that the secondary emotion shows up. So it's that kind of anger or
Mm-hmm.
frustration that shows up. But what's
suppressing
yeah,
suppressing emotions,
yeah,
or trying to suppress
yeah.
emotions,
And
right?
what's really underneath that is the kind of the core issue, and it's about maybe being disconnected or not feeling valued or heard, or those kind of things as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the more you can work with people to talk to them about, what actually is that, yeah.
There's a lot there in my head spinning with questions and things. I wanted to step back slightly to your experience with Hillmorton.
Yep.
You've had this experience with your sister. Then you went to, was it one of your first jobs? Was it Hillmorton?
Yeah.
How do you think that experience has changed over the years? Has it changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Hey, and I think that when I was, if I go back to when I was a child in that, or young person in that space going to the hospital, definitely feeling that way. And when I studied, like, trained as a social worker, I was always like, I don't know if I can do mental health because it's so close to home, and I was quite nervous about it because it was quite raw. But I did a placement in an outpatient team, and I saw the compassion, the support from the doctors and the nurses and the social workers and those teams for people. And I thought, man, these people really care about people, and I think that kind of challenged that narrative a little bit of that experience around, these people are bad people, lock people up and they kind of inject them and stuff like that. That's actually not the experience, and people don't want to be doing that. People want to be, they're in these roles as well because they've had an experience, so they want to help, I think, support people. And no one wants to see people in hospital. They want to get them out thriving in their community. So there's a place for hospitals to get people well again. And sometimes people can't see the wood for the trees in the sense, because they're in that such distress. And I think, that experience of working in that space changed my perspective of it. And actually there are times where hospitals are needed, to kind of contain, support people to get them back living in their community. And the more, obviously we don't want to see people have to end up in Hillmorton Hospital, but ultimately people do need a space at that time. It's just, they need to kind of reset. And the quicker we get them out, the better, but also creating environments are really important. So for me, my work is always trying to advocate for environments. There's one thing around the intervention of talking and things like that, but it's actually the space you create. So, and those things have changed over time. There's been developments in the hospitals and things like that for more fit for purpose spaces. So,
where we come into it with the Yarnsman is, yes, we've been on a, without bringing in my journey as well, it's starting at suicide prevention, but realising we can do a whole lot more suicide prevention and mental health work by swimming, running upstream, and just creating, I hate create spaces, but creating those opportunities and helping people have better yarns.
Yeah.
What do you think of the term social health as a means to battle suicide prevention and mental health? So what we're talking about there is community and connection.
Well, I think it's fundamental to, if you think back historically to, back when we were in the hunter and gatherer kind of society, we were in the environments where it was around social acceptance of each other and having a role in that space. So we are innately social creatures, right? We need that social connection and contact with people. And over time and evolution's evolved and things, we've kind of become more of an individualistic society. So I think for me, some of the concepts of, the cultural concepts from a Māori perspective or other indigenous cultures across the world, they're trying, colonisation had a big impact on that as well, but then I think the work's being done to revitalise some of that connection with your community as well. So, and the people you're around, because that fosters a sense of safety, security, and again, when you're in those environments where you're connected to people, you've got a sense of purpose and meaning. I think you're much more equipped to manage the adversities that you face as well, because you're not facing it alone, you're facing it with a community of people.
You touched on rituals with, cultural rituals. Do you think part of the problem well, let's just call it with white men,
Yeah.
is that we don't have any rituals to come together to do that other than a game of rugby or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I think that there's a sense of that, I think there's or it's around a collective purpose, you know, and something that's not ego driven, but it's bigger than each of us. You know, we've talked about this before around what is that brings us together, but as a collective we bring something to that space, but it's not us to hold, it's not our role to hold it individually, but as a collective we hold that, whatever that might be. So I totally agree with you. I think there's the more spaces you can create people to move towards something that's meaningful and important, the better. And I think different groups of people will find what that is for them. You know, like for some people, what I might connect with might be different to the next person, but it's, you know, trying to create those spaces to connect with in a group space.
Let's switch it up and bring it into, you know, the social prescribing and work that we've done there. I mean, you and I have connected on this for a while and developed that. What do you see as the role of, you know, bringing in that kind of social prescribing? Well, first, what is social prescribing in your language?
Yeah.
And the role that can play.
Well, I think it's at a really basic level, you know, when people think about prescribing, they think about prescribing medications, right? You know, and that's say if I think of mental health, that's all the antidepressants and things. But so social prescribing is you're prescribing social activity or social connection opportunities for someone as part of their plan, you know. And I think that's one of the challenges. Where do you send people to, you know, in terms of where can you refer someone to or connect someone to socially? And I think that's the great thing about the Yarnsman is creating that opportunity here for conversations and spaces for men to connect and over something that's actually really meaningful. It's about, you know, connecting with your values, connecting with things that we all struggle with, but actually the understanding that we collectively struggle with that brings a sense of peace, I think, with people. And it's like, it's not changing the fact that you're struggling with things, but it's actually, oh shit, Matthew struggles with that, or Karl struggles with that, so I'm not alone in that sense. And it's actually, I like the way he spoke about that. I might use that, you know. And I think that's about there's opportunities to learn from each other, and we're always learning, And I think that you might equally hear something from something like, I didn't quite, that doesn't resonate with me. I'm like, no thanks, that's all right. You're all right, mate. You can do that one, but I'll pass. You know, and that's cool. You know, like people have different ways of doing things, and I think it's about, but it's also that's the respect part, of respecting people's journeys. And mental health's a really interesting one for me, because, you know, with physical, but particularly with physical health issues, you know the treatment, right? You know, like this is the treatment for a broken leg, or this is a treatment for a heart transplant, or whatever. It's 9 times out of 10 it works, you know. Whereas mental health, it's quite nuanced, quite subjective. So what works for me might not work for you, you know. So there's no magic bullet to this, or kind of silver bullet that's going to solve everything for people. It's like, it is a bit of trial and error. And
it's dynamic. So what might work a year ago might not work for you today, or whatever that it looks like.
Because the context changes as well, you know. And I think that the thing I like about, like just talking before about, you know, some of that sense of social health and social prescribing is really important, but it's also in the context of someone in the other aspects of themselves. So they've got their physical health, you know, they've got their spiritual sense, not in the sense of religion, but they're kind of who they are as a person as well. So that kind of, again, those more of those cultural models, I think we have a lot to learn from those, you know. Even, you know, think of there's a lot of things around meditation and mindfulness now, and that kind of stuff. Those historic ways of being, that they're not new ways of being. We've just over time like moved away from them, but we're starting to move back towards them because we realise that slowing down and connecting with those fundamental parts of our sense of self is so important. And one way of doing that is through the social aspect of that. And that if you're more connected socially, you're more likely to have better outcomes in terms of your physical health. You know, those I love that Harvard study. I can't remember the exact name of it, but they talk about this 90-year study that
the longitudinal study,
you know, and they found that those with greater social connection live longer, better outcomes in multiple areas of their life, and it came down to that being connected, being
I think there was a stat in there, and I won't get it quite right, but having, if we say, if you've got 5 close connections, that's not having having close connections is more detrimental to you than smoking. Was it 5 cigarettes a day?
Something like that. Yeah.
And that whole thing of when I hear your journey, and we talk about it in this context, you went through some really tough times, right? But you had the family, the friends, you had that good connection, right?
Yeah.
And if we go to suicides, most, if not all, suicides have had a relationship breakdown in the 12 to 48 hours prior. So how do we combat that stuff? Is by creating, allowing, enabling communities and people to have those yarns, right?
Yeah.
And we don't need to wait till sit through a shit time to be able to do that. And that's part of our challenge, right? How do we break the taboos of no, I'm all right, I don't need it, or I can white knuckle it, I can DIY it, I can work it out, to that we should be able to have that community and should be able to yarn about anything, no matter how hard or easy it is, right?
Yeah. And I think there's different layers, right, as well. So we really want to keep people thriving in their communities, doing what they need to be doing, but sometimes also acknowledging that when you need help, I need a bit of help to do this. I think you showed me something really, really cool before around, absolutely the stuff that you can do yourself or with other people, from more of that kind of, I don't love the word peer, but that kind of, that from that first level kind of support, it might be your friends or family and things like that. But then often at times you might need someone else that kind of has that external perspective to support you. And it's okay to ask for that help. And like I said earlier, I think one of the biggest things, seeing people in the work, guys tend to wait till shit hits the fan. You're at the point of the wife saying, I'm going to leave you now, before you come and seek help, So how do we get to people earlier, and how do we, by, through these mechanisms of social prescribing or more opportunities to talk about things and develop skills that you don't. So how do you sustain your relationship, rather than, what's your part in that, and how do you create healthy relationships? I don't think we do enough around what that looks like. And how do you maintain connections outside of your family as well, because that's important. Because a lot of men, and even myself included, like, one of the things that you kind of get so hyper-focused on family, your kids and your wife, which is really important. But actually, you've got some other people behind you there, your mates, that you're probably missing out on those opportunities to connect with them as well. So, and it's not that you don't love or care about them, it's just that you kind of get so focused on what's in front of you and those roles, or it might be a busy job and things like that. But actually, a lot of the time in the work I've done with people as well, it's about people reconnecting, say, with their friends or someone that was really important to them they haven't seen for months. Once they do that, it's like, shit, I feel good, I feel good, just, and that's the social component, right? It's just talking, it doesn't have to be about, we're talking about how depressed something might be or whatever. It's just actually having those opportunities to connect and be with someone.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff in there, we were talking before we came online, about, practicing what we preach and things, and even for us in this practicing what we preach, and even for us, we still need to be reminded. And I think, like, my wife probably knows when I'm struggling, maybe a week or two before I do, even though I'm pretty good with it, right? And it just, sometimes you do need that extra help, and it's okay to do that. One of the things that I've been fascinated with the question. I've probably said it too many times on the podcast. It's like, who were you before the world got their hands on you? So there becomes a thing where, particularly for guys, we're a DIY, culture. So I go, right, I'm struggling. I'm going to jump into self-improvement. I'm going to just go to the gym heaps. I'm going to do that. But actually, yes, that's good, but you do need a combination, as you've already touched on, of community and to community, friendships, connection, to be able to get that part of it, right? So it's as simple as that, and you come to it, and then we can finish it with just come to a Yarnsman event, and that'll sort you out. But it's not about it's actually not about just being sorted out.
Yeah.
It's about being part of a community, for the highs, lows, and bits in between.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And look, life is unpredictable, right? You know, it's not a linear thing, and we all have different experiences and different things that we face. But if you've got people in your corner, it makes it a bit more manageable, you know. And the whole pursuit of what happiness is, or that kind of false trap of actually, what does it actually look like, you know? And actually, when you break it down with people, it's actually being connected to the things that actually mean something to them, you know. And that's where you get joy and beautiful moments of being with those people, and that creates the emotion of happiness in those moments, you know. So the more we can do that, the better. And getting people to talk about it and looking for ways to do that is so important. And you know, for some people, it might be being the father, or for some people it might be the guy that's creating the business, or for someone else it might be whatever that looks like. And that's cool. You're just going to find what that is for you, you know, and what drives you and creates meaning and purpose. And then finding people to share that with, you know.
I'm a massive fan of reaching in rather than reaching out. So the whole idea is that if you can see someone struggling or whatever, what advice do you have for people that might see someone struggling? Might seem like a bit more of an extreme word. If someone's having a low moment, a low mood, or you know, change in behaviour, what would you suggest?
I think sometimes we beat around the bush a lot. You know, it's part of our culture as well. But I think sometimes you need to be a bit more direct and ask questions. Like, actually, hey, you know, and look, I know, like myself, I've got brothers, I've got mates, you know, but sometimes the default, even I do it sometimes, I'm just like, people ask how you're doing, and it's like, yeah, I'm all good, thanks mate, yeah, not too bad, yeah, and then you just kind of accept it, you know. But actually, if you pause for a second, you think, well, actually, you're not so good, you know. Hey, look, mate, like I noticed that I haven't seen you for a while, or you seem quieter than usual, you know, what's going on, you know. And through that, that might open up the conversation, you know. I think that also, rather than, say, going out for a beer or a drink, which is great for some people, that works. What about going for, I don't know, a walk or a coffee or something else, you know, that kind of, or if you share something else, interest together, why don't you go and do that? I think for men in particular, rather than sitting them in a chair opposite each other talking about things, that doesn't always work so well. You know, it's side by side, you know. So might be doing something together that you say, well, hey man, do you want to go out for a bike ride or whatever, or something it is that you might have a shared interest in, or even if it's playing PlayStation, I don't know, you know, like
drive
go for a feed, go for a drive, and ask the question, you know, like, and sometimes it's even easier that I've found as well at times, if you've noticed something, even say, you know, I've not just about me, but that might, by disclosing a little bit about yourself and your own situation, it might open the door for them to kind of
the trust and vulnerability part of it.
So
but
to being vulnerable, I think is quite important in that space. And I think that over time, when people observe that, because we're all learning from people, right? And we get that sense. So there's people that in your life that you think I'd actually would tell that stuff to, versus some people that you wouldn't, right? So, but I think that comes through time of people seeing you being vulnerable and being there for people, showing up as well, and also, don't overcommit yourself as well to help people, because sometimes that can be a bit of a burden for you. You know, you might say, I want to help you do something for you, but then you go home and you're like, oh shit, you know, now I'm worrying about this person. But equally, it's not your burden to carry. All you can do is your part in that space, and actually keep your boundary around that, and actually, it's one of those old cliche sayings, but it's true. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, you know what I mean?
You got to salt the oats.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, people have to, if people have to be willing to change, you know. And it's, I think the way I frame up, say when I was doing more direct work with people, it's the role of a therapy environment is to facilitate the process. We can open the door, but you have to walk through it, you know.
So there's a really interesting point. So it's you know, we've talked about how can you support someone, but if you're really struggling, is it, and maybe this is not the right thing, but are you that unhappy or that uncomfortable that you're ready to change?
Yeah, I don't know, like sometimes people struggle to know what they need, you know. There might be all these things that are happening in their life, other people are seeing it, but they're not seeing it. So I think there comes a point where people, and again, we go to these cliche sayings, but sometimes until there's enough pressure on someone, they're not going to change, and it's, what do they say? Diamonds are made out of extreme pressure. Again, it's these sort of things, but through that space, I think there is growth that happens through it, and you may not see it, but it's actually not till you're actually at the other side that you can look back and see that. And then I think there's learning from that, because sometimes I think it's the first time that you might seek help, or you might be something's not going so well, that then later on in life, when you face those difficulties, that that actually from that experience you know how to deal with it. So for me now, like I had a period when I was 18, you'd classify it as depression, and it was a really difficult time for me, and I had some great people around me, really good friends, supportive family as well. I actually had some medication, some counselling, all that kind of combination of stuff really helped me. But I know now, actually I'm more insightful. I'm susceptible to, say, some mood, depression, anxiety. I really need to look after myself. So you actually have to, and that's on me to do that. For guys, I think that you have to, even if you're in whatever role you're in with someone, talking to someone, if they're talking to you about their situation, you got to understand, I think, for a lot of men, they've never talked to you about that stuff before. Yeah. So that takes extreme vulnerability to do that, and I think it's acknowledging that for people. And I always come from a place of, man, this is the first time you've talked about it. Like, must be really hard. You've been carrying this for, might be 5 years, it might be 30 years, it might be 40 years. But now you're in a place where you're telling me something and you've had to carry that burden. But that's powerful, and I think that it's acknowledging that for people, that takes real courage to do that. And you've told me now, then what's the next step in that space, Ultimately, like I said before, we're not here to do things for people. We can facilitate, create spaces for people. So the more we can do, the more we can normalise that and be compassionate to people. Look, we're not always going to get it right too. I like the 80-20 kind of rule, like 80% of the time I can be pretty good, but 20% of the time, I can make mistakes and do some shit stuff. But we're human, and we're not perfect. We're in this perfectionist kind of culture at times where we have to be at this level, but actually giving yourself a bit of tolerance and a bit of space as well. And it's quite freeing in the sense. You can still do a good job, but you don't have to be perfect.
Well, yeah, it's someone can come to talk to you and you're busy or got your head full, and you can be reflected on it afterwards and follow up with a question or anything. Yeah. But no, I really like that, and that's it's really fantastic. Yeah. And I really appreciate you, your approach and your support and helping us create those opportunities for good yarns with the yarnsmen. So thank you very much, mate.
Yeah, it's a privilege. I appreciate you and your work. I think just observing your work you've done over the years, like the perseverance you've showed, again, that shows to me a lot about your character, and that's the stuff that gives people hope, to see that, people really passionate about things, and, a lot of times you could have given up, and you kind of say, fuck this, I'm out of here. It's too hard, because it's bloody hard to get things set up like this, and you have a lot of people out there that will doubt you and kind of question you and stuff like that. But the intention is, from my perspective, is a really pure and good intention from this work. And, I love, there's a lot of people out there selling this as a business, it's about, no disrespect to them. Some people, it can be feels a bit about their ego and it's their show, but actually, you're the man behind it, but equally you allow it to be something that's a collective and that gets people on board. And I think you should be really proud of that, because it's a pretty special thing. And
thank you. I mean, there's the sales pitch for people to come along. Yeah. But thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate you.
Bloody good.